The Toy Box Killer's torture chamber found in New Mexico. A hidden hell no one saw coming. The screams, the terror, all confined within four walls. But what happened next shocked everyone. The year was 1999, and the quiet desert of Albuquerque, New Mexico, hid a horrific secret. A secluded trailer, tucked far from the eyes of the world, became the site of unimaginable suffering. Inside, a room transformed into a torture chamber, designed by a man who blended perversion with methodical cruelty. The victim was a woman, Jane Doe, though her name would soon echo in the minds of millions. Her escape would spark one of the most disturbing true crime investigations in America. The suspect? David Parker Ray, a man whose charm hid the horrors lurking behind his doors. This wasn't just a case of abduction. This was something far more sinister. Keep watching because you won't believe what came to light next. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a case. Jane Doe was a young woman, just starting to carve out a life for herself. Like many others, she had dreams, simple ones, of finding a good job, a comfortable home, and maybe even love. She was independent, yet not without vulnerability. Living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, she was familiar with the quiet stretches of the desert, the occasional loner hitchhiker or wanderer passing through, and the stories of strange encounters that were whispered but rarely acted upon. On that fateful day in March of 1999, Jane was no different from any other woman out there, trying to navigate the world. She had been hitchhiking, just trying to get from one place to another. But when David Parker Ray appeared, offering a ride in his truck, she didn't hesitate. He seemed kind enough, a man who spoke softly with a knowing smile. He wasn't the first stranger to offer help, and she didn't think twice. Ray's charm was disarming. At 52 years old, he had the look of someone you could trust, a face that could easily blend into the crowd. His brown hair, neatly combed, and a weathered but calm demeanor seemed harmless. The only thing that stood out was the truck itself, isolated and rugged, much like the man driving it. But what Jane didn't know was that the man behind the wheel had been hiding a sinister secret for years, a secret crafted in the seclusion of his own private hell. David Parker Ray had spent years building the perfect torture chamber, a hidden, twisted room that would later be known as the Toy Box. It was a place where he could enact his darkest desires, a room designed with precision, filled with devices meant to restrain and inflict pain. Every detail had been carefully planned, each piece of equipment chosen for its ability to control and break those unlucky enough to find themselves in its grip. But before the chamber was revealed to Jane, she had no reason to suspect the danger. She didn't know about the chains, the whips, the electrical devices that awaited her. The room was set, the trap was laid. She was unaware that the man she trusted would soon become her worst nightmare. As they drove further into the desert, her sense of security began to fade, and the eerie quiet of the truck began to feel more suffocating. Her life as she knew it was about to change forever. The drive was long, the landscape growing more desolate with every passing mile. Jane sat quietly in the passenger seat, unaware that the road she was traveling would soon become the most terrifying of her life. The wind outside howled, carrying the scent of dust and desert sage as David Parker Ray chatted casually, his voice steady and calm. Jane, lost in the rhythm of the road, felt a slight unease but attributed it to nothing more than the loneliness of being alone with a stranger in the vast wilderness. As they pulled up to Ray's trailer, hidden far from any main road, Jane's discomfort grew. The small, isolated structure was surrounded by nothing but sand and sparse vegetation, no neighbors, no signs of life. Ray assured her it was just a place to rest. "You can stay here for the night," he offered with a smile, one that seemed oddly comforting given the situation. But inside, the atmosphere changed immediately. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior that felt cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the warm exterior Ray had projected. Jane hesitated for a moment, but the invitation to come inside seemed harmless enough. What she didn't know was that this would be her last moment of freedom. Ray led her into the back of the trailer, where she was introduced to the horrifying reality of his toy box. The room was a nightmare incarnate, walls adorned with chains, whips, pulleys, and an array of bizarre, terrifying instruments designed to restrain and punish. A wooden frame in the center of the room, resembling an X, stood as a grim testament to the suffering it had witnessed. Before Jane could react, Ray's demeanor shifted. He quickly subdued her, using ropes and shackles to bind her to the table. His calm, methodical approach made the horror even more chilling. As Jane struggled, he calmly pressed a button, activating a tape recorder that played a disturbing pre-recorded message, his own voice describing in cold detail the torment she was about to endure. The words cut through her, each sentence reinforcing the horrific truth of her situation. She was trapped. The sounds of her cries filled the room, but Ray remained unfazed, focused on his grotesque ritual. However, Jane's survival instincts kicked in. With a burst of adrenaline, she fought against the restraints, managing to break free from the chains that held her. Gasping for breath, her hands still shaking from terror, she ran as fast as she could, bursting through the door and into the cold desert night. Her escape was a miracle. But it wasn't over yet. She knew she had to get help or the nightmare would continue. When Jane Doe made it to the highway, her body bloodied and bruised, she collapsed into the arms of a passing truck driver, who immediately called for help. The authorities were alerted, and within moments they had Jane in their care. Her story was harrowing, her words fragmented, but they painted a clear picture of the horror she had just narrowly escaped. She described a man, a trailer in the middle of nowhere, and a room filled with unspeakable instruments designed for pain and suffering. As police scrambled to piece together the details of Jane's escape, they couldn't shake the chilling reality of what she had revealed. A room of torture, a man who had preyed on women for years. There was no doubt that they were dealing with a predator on a scale few could comprehend. Detective Michael Marquez, the lead investigator, knew this would be no ordinary case. The team moved quickly. They rushed to the trailer, just a short distance from where Jane had been found. Upon arrival, the scene inside was every bit as horrific as Jane had described. A trail of discarded restraints and medical equipment, whips, chains, and worse, filled the small room. They found tapes and photographs detailing the torment of past victims. Ray had meticulously documented every act of sadistic violence. The detectives were sickened by what they saw but knew they had to keep pushing forward. But then the investigation took a strange turn. David Parker Ray wasn't a new face in town. He had lived in Albuquerque for years, and his history was surprisingly clean. He had no prior criminal record, no indications of violence or sexual assault. To the outside world, he was just another quiet man in his 50s. Yet the detectives couldn't ignore the evidence mounting against him. The first breakthrough came when investigators found a chilling videotape in Ray's collection. On it was a recording of a woman, one of his victims, bound and terrified, her screams echoing off the walls. But what was even more disturbing was the sound of Ray's voice on the tape, calmly explaining what was happening, as if narrating a twisted ritual. The police were horrified, realizing the extent of his depravity. But they were also certain of one thing: Ray was no ordinary criminal. He had a pattern, a method. He wasn't acting on impulse, he was calculating, patient. A search of Ray's background uncovered disturbing details that were slowly beginning to add up. He had been in the military, where he learned to control, manipulate, and subdue. Some speculated that his training might have played a role in his ability to carry out such precise, sadistic acts. But what was truly shocking was the discovery of Ray's accomplices. But then, just as the case seemed to be progressing, a critical piece of the puzzle went missing. Cindy Hendy, Ray's girlfriend and co-conspirator, disappeared. Authorities feared she had gone into hiding, and the sense of urgency heightened. They had a suspect, a monster who preyed on vulnerable women, but now they faced another challenge. The woman who had aided and abetted his horrific acts was on the run. As days passed, new victims began to come forward, recounting similar tales of abduction, abuse, and escape. Each testimony filled in more pieces of the disturbing picture that was emerging. Some of the women had escaped, some had been too afraid to speak, but each story confirmed the pattern. Ray had been terrorizing women for years, and his reign of horror was far from over. The investigation was intensifying. The team knew they were closing in on a monster who had slipped through the cracks of the system for too long. But the question remained: would they catch him before he could claim another victim? The investigation was about to reach its boiling point. David Parker Ray was now the prime suspect in a series of horrifying crimes, but his capture had proven elusive. Authorities were closing in, but Ray seemed to be always one step ahead. His girlfriend and accomplice, Cindy Hendy, had gone into hiding, further complicating the case. The authorities were left with no choice but to pull out all the stops. The tension was palpable and time was running out. Then a break in the case came from an unexpected source. A tip from an anonymous caller led the police to a local motel, where they found Ray, holed up in a rundown room, looking strangely composed. He wasn't fleeing as the investigators had expected. He was waiting. It was as though he had known that his time had come. The police arrested him without resistance, but as they led him out in handcuffs, Ray remained eerily calm. The chilling smile he gave the camera showed no remorse, only the satisfaction of a man who believed he had already won. But it wasn't over. Despite his arrest, the investigation continued, uncovering more of the horror that Ray had left behind. Police unearthed more of his videotapes, each one documenting the abuse and the torment of his victims. They found evidence that pointed to even more women, some of whom had never been identified. Ray had kept meticulous records, chronicling his sadistic acts and boasting about his conquests. His delusion and sense of control over his victims were clear in every frame, every word. In court, Ray was unapologetic. His defense attorneys tried to argue that the tapes were fictional, a product of fantasy, but the jury wasn't buying it. The evidence was overwhelming. Ray's own words, his calculated approach to the abductions, and the testimonies from survivors painted a clear picture of a man who had acted with cold, premeditated malice. After a lengthy trial, he was convicted on numerous charges, including kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. Yet even in the face of his conviction, Ray continued to show no remorse. In the years following his arrest, more victims came forward, and the full scope of his crimes began to unfold. Investigators uncovered chilling details of how Ray had lured his victims with false promises of safety, only to imprison them in his personal hell. His ability to maintain a facade of normalcy, even after the crimes, stunned the public. But just as the world thought it had reached an end to Ray's reign of terror, a shocking twist emerged. In 2002, David Parker Ray died of a heart attack while serving his life sentence. His death, however, left many unanswered questions. There were still missing women, some of whom had never been found, and others whose stories had never been fully heard. The true extent of his crimes may never be fully known. While Ray had been convicted and locked away, the possibility remained that there were victims whose names had been lost to time. His death did not bring closure for everyone. For many, the lingering question remained: how many others had fallen victim to his twisted games? Had Ray been part of a larger network of criminals? The answers would never come, as the man who had orchestrated it all was now gone. And so, the mystery of David Parker Ray remains. Though justice was served, his death left a void, one that may never be filled. Some truths, it seems, are meant to stay buried. The legacy of his crimes, however, continues to haunt those who survived and those who were left with nothing but unanswered questions. The truth may still be out there. David Parker Ray's psychological profile paints a chilling picture of a sadistic predator who operated with meticulous planning and a disturbing sense of entitlement. His actions reflect a combination of deep-seated narcissism, sadistic pleasure, and extreme antisocial behavior, which allowed him to carry out his crimes without hesitation or remorse. At the core of Ray's behavior lies a profound desire for control. Research into similar cases of serial perpetrators reveals that many of them, like Ray, seek dominance over their victims through physical and psychological torture. His methodical approach, carefully documenting each act, preparing his toy box for maximum terror, suggests that he found gratification not only in the pain of others but in the control he exerted over their suffering. His need for power over women, specifically vulnerable ones, was central to his identity. Ray's repeated behavior of abducting, torturing, and ultimately discarding his victims shows a callous disregard for human life and a complete absence of empathy. His use of a pre-recorded tape to explain the horrors his victims would endure speaks to his desire to desensitize them, turning their suffering into a twisted ritual. This method not only increased his sense of control but also allowed him to compartmentalize his actions, distancing himself from the emotional and psychological weight of his crimes. By turning his torture into a cold, detached performance, Ray reduced the emotional consequences of his actions, focusing instead on the practicalities of inflicting pain. This type of psychological detachment is common in sadistic individuals, who often view their victims as objects or playthings, incapable of evoking real emotional responses. Ray's apparent lack of remorse also points to his narcissistic tendencies. Narcissism often manifests as a heightened sense of self-importance and entitlement, which Ray seems to have internalized. His calm demeanor during the arrest, his failure to show any genuine regret for his actions, and his continued denial in the face of overwhelming evidence all suggest that Ray saw himself as above reproach. For him, his victims were nothing more than tools for his pleasure, and their suffering was irrelevant to his sense of self. Additionally, Ray's ability to maintain a normal public persona, a seemingly harmless, mild-mannered man who blended into society, highlights the dangers of psychopaths who can easily deceive and manipulate those around them. His charm and outward appearance of normality allowed him to operate undetected for so long. Psychopaths often possess high levels of intelligence, charm, and superficial likability, which they use to manipulate and exploit others without suspicion. This facade of normalcy, combined with his sadistic tendencies, made Ray a particularly dangerous individual. Understanding Ray's psychological makeup helps to explain the terror he instilled in his victims and the chilling nature of his crimes. His actions were not the result of a momentary lapse in judgment or uncontrolled impulse. They were the result of a calculated, deeply ingrained psychological need to dominate, degrade, and destroy. His case serves as a haunting reminder of the dark capacity some individuals possess to cause harm and the depths of psychological depravity that can exist within seemingly ordinary people. David Parker Ray's reign of terror was one of calculated cruelty, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions. His cold, methodical torture chamber, the countless victims whose voices were silenced, and his chilling indifference to the suffering he caused, these are the aspects of his case that haunt us. Ray was a master of manipulation, creating a facade of normalcy that allowed him to slip through the cracks for years, undetected by those around him. Though justice was served with his conviction, his death left many mysteries unresolved. How many victims did he truly have? How much deeper did his depravity run? These questions may never be answered, but they serve as a grim reminder of the dark side of human nature. For the survivors, the emotional scars left behind will last a lifetime, their stories forever tied to the terror they endured. If you found this story disturbing, be sure to subscribe and join us for the next case. We'll continue to uncover the chilling truths that lie hidden in the shadows of our world. The question remains, how many monsters are out there, hiding in plain sight, wearing the masks of normalcy while committing unspeakable acts in secret? What do you think? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. And remember, the truth may still be out there.